You're listening to Thunderquack Podcast Network.
Did you see Black Panther?
Yeah.
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 That's all you have to say about it?
No, I have lots to say about it. Are we recording?
Yep.
I'm going to let my thoughts just go into the ether. There's no... I read actually a really good article today because basically it was about like the feminism of Black Panther, and it was like a construction of like Black Panther versus Wonder Woman, and it was like really good. It's this white author who she was realizing, like, as soon as she got out of the movie, she's like, oh my god, I have to write this. But then she's like, no, it's not my time. Like, I need to leave space for people to talk about this whose voices matter more than mine when in regards to like the reactions to Black Panther. So she sort of like left it, and she's like, you know what? People can talk about all the things. This is an opportunity to support POCs and like their conversations. But then she realized that people on the internet were being like, how come white women aren't speaking up about the feminism in Black Panther? And she's like, great, this is my time. And so her article is really good, where she's kind of like, yes, the feminism in Black Panther kicks the ass out of Wonder Woman, and here are the reasons why. And it's like this really great, it's just such a great deconstruction of like toxic masculinity and what was so great about the Black Panther, not only like the king, like T'Challa himself, but like all the women around him, and how that like it was so beautiful. And every time I see these photos of the stars, it's the 8 stars, it's a 50-50 split. There are 4 women and 4 men that were the leads of that movie. Like it's just crazy.
And the women hold higher positions of authority, like if you kind of count them overall, versus the male characters, right? Because like it's kind of weird because both T'Challa and Killmonger become king, but he's technically never the king because he never dies. But spoilers, by the way. This is not the official spoiler cast. We haven't done the official spoiler cast, but I just think that movie was it's timely. Like it was the right time for it to happen. It sucks that the world is in the state that it's in, but the upshot of that is that, you know, whenever sort of darkness encroaches like this, there's generally an artistic sort of backlash. And in that backlash, we get incredible stuff, right? I mean, like during Vietnam, film went through an evolution that like it went from B movies and you know, like sort of melodrama and that sort of thing, like things like Gone with the Wind or you know, Them, movies like that, and it into an era of movies like The French Connection, and then into movies like Star Wars, and like both of those sort of avenues, right? They are direct responses to what was happening during Vietnam, right? The polar opposites, right? Like movies like The French Connection and that they get into sort of like the nitty gritty and sort of the darker side, and movies started getting Taxi Driver and stuff like that. Like it started having this veritas to it that film hadn't had before that. And then on the flip side of that, George Lucas and people like him were looking for a way to escape from that sort of nihilistic viewpoint that film was heading towards, and put a little bit of hope back into storytelling, right? And we're there again. Like, if you look at movies that are being made right now, like, there are movies that are that sort of really dark, scary part of humanity, like Get Out, right? And then on the flip side of that, you've got something like Black Panther, which is this incredible science fiction, fantasy, hope-filled story about what the world could be. Right? So,
did you see amazing. The thing that Disney donated $1 million to the Brothers and Sisters of America?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, to fund STEM stuff.
Yeah,
which is just so awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, look, Disney. There's been some new stuff in the news with Disney as a corporation and Disneyland, the Disney parks, in particular, but Disneyland very specifically, in the last couple of days.
Oh, I have not been.
That I'm particularly sensitive to, because I have a friend who works at a Disney park. So, we talk about it on a regular basis. We were just talking about it yesterday. All these articles came out about the sort of near. The number of people who are living below the poverty line, but working at Disneyland, providing the peak of
customer service and experiences for people that are coming to the park.
These are people who devote their lives to ensuring that people who come to the park have the best time that they possibly can, and that is end to end. That is Disneyland. And to me, over Disney World, in my experience, Disneyland has that in just multitudes over Disney World. And I think partially because it is it's the original, and there's still a little bit of that Walt DNA still in the ideology of the people who work there.
Right.
The corporation doesn't hold those same ideals, which is really unfortunate, because there's not the same lineage. Bob Iger never worked with Walt Disney, right? So it's not like he was groomed and trained. He was selected by a board to make sure that the business was running at peak efficiency. But there's an aspect of the park itself that the one of the articles talks about this guy who is he's a night custodian, one of the overnight custodians, and he's third generation in his family to work at Disneyland. His grandfather was, by his account, the first security guard at Disneyland.
Oh wow.
And so that means that his grandfather worked with Walt Disney, not for Walt Disney, with Walt Disney in the early days of the park. And then his aunt and uncle worked there, and then he works there, sort of carrying on that family tradition, because it has traditionally been seen as a good place to work, right?
Right, yeah.
But there's all these people who they are traveling hours to get to work, because you can't live in Orange County.
Oh, right, yeah.
And also work at Disneyland, because you're making less than $13 an hour.
Right, yeah.
Right? And it's this really sort of sad account of several firsthand accounts that Disneyland as a business is operating sort of in spite of the human beings that are being underserved by the company that they work for. And I think oh, sorry.
I'm sorry that I didn't realize this. I'm going to sit further away.
I think that Disney is going to there's a tickle in my throat, basically.
Oh, sorry. I can't help you.
It's okay. This is just a regularly scheduled. People who listen to this know. They've already listened to Rebels this week and heard me.
Oh, sorry. I'm coughing all week.
Yeah. But my hope is that it's going to change things. So Disney is a multi-headed beast. It's a big company. sometimes I think one hand doesn't know what the other hand's doing. So on the one hand, they're giving all of this money for STEM research. On the other hand,
they're not paying their
they're not paying their employees, their cast members, a living wage to live and work.
Because one's a publicity stunt and the other one actually is their bottom line. So, but a group did do, like, one of the reasons why this is all coming out now is because this group did this really in-depth survey of everybody working there and sort of like what their living conditions are like, whether they're in overcrowded homes or how far their commute is, all sorts of stuff like that, how much money they're making, and how, like, sort of what their financial breakdown is. and they actually, like, laid it out in a way to, like, show Disneyland, if you actually increased the baseline, I think it was to $20 an hour, that it would actually only dip into like 4% of their profits, their projected profits for 2018, and it would mean like X amount of dollars back in the Anaheim economic sort of like circulation, right? Yeah. So it's actually like, it's better for everybody if Disney just does this. Right, yeah. And hopefully it'll put pressure on them, and it will also show them that financially it does make sense. And that just from a humanitarian standpoint and from like the ideological standpoint, it's Disneyland. It's got his name on it. Yeah. And you know, Walt Disney had his own issues, you know. Anti-Semitism being one of the ones that people like to talk about the most. And I don't know, because, I mean, like, obviously, I didn't know the guy, and I don't know enough about, like, sort of the accounts of his beliefs in that sense. But, I mean, like, it was a different time. You can't hold somebody from that era to the same standards. In the 1930s and 40s, guess what? Everybody was an anti-Semite unless you were a Jew. It would, like, to a certain degree. But people also history likes to make us think that because it makes history easier to digest if that's true. Because the thing that's scarier to somebody think is that maybe
as somebody who has relatives who can tell you, it's always been that way. There's always been so like, but people, it wasn't just anti-Semitism. It was like
everything sucked.
Yeah, if you were Irish, you couldn't get a job in certain places.
You can get a job as a woman. I've been researching this women in animation, and all of the stuff goes back to Disney and seeing these letters of people being like, actually, you can't work here because you can't do the things that we do and create stories.
So it's like it's a different time and a different era. And it doesn't make it okay that it happened. It just means that, like, you can't, I don't know, you can't hold somebody accountable for a belief structure that is contemporary to the time. Unless he gets transported magically into 2018, you can't really get mad at him for holding the same beliefs as many of the people around him.
You straight up can, but you need to look at it through different lenses that are like based in because people talk about this. Oh my gosh, we were totally talking about this the other day when someone was talking about Abraham Lincoln and the idea that like Lincoln did a lot of bad things, but he also freed like the slaves. And so it's like, which one, like, yes, he lived in a time in which by today's standards, he probably should be ostracized by political communities and by society because of some of the beliefs he held. But at the same time, he was really responsible for one of the best things that ever happened to America is getting abolishing slavery. So it's this whole thing where, you know, contextual information matters. But sure, Walt Disney, I understand. Like, there's a legacy to Walt Disney that the idea is like, what do we taint and what do we keep and what do we, as long as we go in with open eyes and realize that there are still a lot of problematic things with Disney, but I think that it's trying. And I'm so excited for A Wrinkle in Time. I'm so excited.
I have absolutely no interest. It looks a lot like just from like a sort of visual and storytelling standpoint, it looks so much like Tomorrowland.
So here's the thing.
Was such a like dud of a movie.
You should still give it your money because it has a female director with a huge budget, and if it doesn't make money, they're going to stop giving big budget films to female directors. Like as just a general thing.
I think that we're actually kind of over. I think not just in terms of female directors, but I think that the Hollywood system is getting over that hump of the like. Until a certain generation dies off, it's always going to be there. But but I do think that things are definitely changing. I mean, you look at a lot of the movies that are coming out right now. Black Panther being a really great example. It's like Black Panther is a movie that traditionally would have been considered risky, right? Black director. I don't know what this actual statistic is, but I'll go ahead and say 90%. More than that. I mean, like there's what, like a handful of white people in it? And then at one point they're in Korea, right? Yeah. And then the rest of the time they're in Wakanda, and it's all African American, like black cast, right? So.
Not just African American. I really love those things that people break down, the idea that there's so much diversity in the cast.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said, African American.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah, that's cool.
I do think that we have turned a corner. It doesn't mean that we can't turn back, because that happens, right? The pendulum sort of swings back and forth.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see, like, in the mid to late 90s, the girl power movement, and then in the early 2000s, the polar swing back of just, like, super exploitative, disgusting, sort of, like misogynistic filmmaking practices that came in the early 2000s, like looking at like the Transformers movies, where it's like, go back and watch the first Transformers movie and try not to be offended at every scene that Megan Fox is in.
Right. Yeah.
I like Megan Fox. I think she's actually a really talented actress. I think that
Jennifer's Body is one of the best movies.
Yeah,
it's such a good movie. Good.
But Michael Bay treats her like a piece of meat. Yeah. Right? I want to swear so bad when I say that. It's disgusting, and it's like don't get me wrong, like Megan Fox is pretty smoking hot. I'm like, objectively, she is a beautiful person.
And they use that well in Jennifer's Body, where they play on that and let her also act.
She is seen as an object of desire and just an absolute piece of meat throughout that movie. Yeah. And really serves very little plot purpose or anything other than just sort of like Sam Witwicky's that movie bothers me. Childish fantasies, right? Like it is actually pretty gross, but that's coming on the heels of, like I said, like girl power, and like in the mid to late 90s, I think that companies like Disney and like there were all these movies coming out that had these really great empowered female characters of all kinds. I mean, like Clueless is a really good example.
I love Clueless.
And, like, Legally Blonde, and like it was all sort of part of that movement of girl power, and obviously the Spice Girls and everything, sort of being the center of that. But yeah, then like if you really look at it, there like the pendulum swings back. Like there was a backlash in the early 2000s of like female characters being written by men as subservient and just like token and objectified and so like I said, it feels like we've turned a corner where female directed movies, like it's not even like the point that I was trying to make is that it's not about what the person behind the camera is, man, woman, white, person of color, whatever, right? it really comes down to much more important aspects of bankability, which is sort of is it part of a franchise first and foremost, and thankfully, like, we're in this really awesome era of sort of franchise overload, which everybody else maligns, and they go, "Oh, superhero fatigue," and the same thing's going to happen with Star Wars. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's obnoxious. I think Black Panther absolutely just crushes that notion. And Infinity War, which got pushed up a week.
I'm so excited. Yeah.
Exactly the same. Like, it's going to come out and it's just going to destroy box office numbers. There's no such thing as superhero fatigue. People are down for these movies 110%. Yeah. And it means that because people are invested in the universe, that Marvel and Disney can go, yeah, Black Panther, all black cast, right? Like, just like do it. It takes it, like, you know, there isn't a moment in that movie where you go like, oh, are they going to go to America to, like, contemporize the story, right? Like,
it's good. The way that the pieces,
obviously, by the end of it, they do go to America. Yeah. But I think that's more setting up things for Infinity War than anything. And it is organic by the end of it. Like they tie it in. Yeah. And it's an important part of the story. But the movie takes place in Wakanda. It doesn't take place somewhere else. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it, like, that is, I think that's sort of like the biggest sign to me, is that, like, as long as we have this era of Marvel and Star Wars and DC and I don't know what other franchises, Harry Potter and sort of like all of these other things, and like Harry Potter is probably the biggest disappointment to me, where they have so many opportunities with these new stories to do something interesting, and they're just being totally it's just boring.
The Johnny Depp thing also is bothering so many people. Can I just say, there's this hilarious meme on the internet where, like, it's a thing that it's important to write and say things in books and in narratives and in television shows. Like, there's a difference between implying someone is gay and, like, telling you on screen or in a book that they are gay. Yeah. So this idea that J.K. Rowling often incorporates many different people into her book, that's great. And I understand the heart and the desire to say, but these people are part of my world as well. But they're not, like, written about in book. It's just really funny. I saw somebody's post where it's like, J.K. Rowling, actually, Dumbledore was from Wakanda. Like, it's a thing, like, in response to the Black Panther, because it's, like, such a big thing. Yeah. Where, anyways, I just found that amusing. And yeah, I've been thinking about, because again, I come at stuff through, like, a feminist lens, and the idea that people think about that Honey or the girl from the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, that's the girly one that's, like, Sweetie or whatever her name is. Oh, come on, her name was something cutesy. But anyways, the idea that, like, she is, like, has a heart and is, like, full, like, and, like, generous and loving, and, like, so she's not just about what she looks like, even though that's, like, what the role kind of is. And it's this interesting kind of feminism, right, that she can. So anyways, I just really like seeing all this really cool feminist stuff happening, and especially in something like, the biggest things that they say about something like Black Panther is that a lot of the feminism in that movie comes from T'Challa's character himself. Yeah. Like, the idea that he doesn't get tied down by, like, westernized concepts of masculinity, and that he's allowed to be vulnerable with his dad, and that he's allowed, but while still being like, yes, I will fight you for this position. Like, it doesn't take away from any of his identity, and that he never talks down to the women around. Like, he is part of a support system that he fully recognizes and values, and this idea that it's made fun of, that when he finds the girl again that he really loves, and he gets sort of tripped up, and they all make fun of him for it, and it's a thing that he's like, I love you and you don't want to be with me, that sucks, I'm not going to force you to be with me. But it's like this idea that they have, like, healthy conversations, and like the respect of everybody is mutually there, and it just makes it, in a way, like, something that, like, we should work towards in terms of, like, that's part of the ideal in nature. And the thing that I thought was really interesting in terms of all the other stuff that Killmonger has on him, and, like, all of the the most beautiful and sort of heartbreaking part about watching that movie is that you like villains are so great when you understand them and what they're coming from. When they're right. Yeah, like this idea that's like
he's not wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Right? But it's the idea of like what
because that's the evolution of T'Challa's character from the beginning of the movie to the end.
Yeah.
Is that at the beginning of the movie, if Killmonger comes up to him and says what he says, he's going to be like, no, get out of Wakanda, you're not one of us. And by the end of the movie, he's like, no, you've always been one of us. And you're absolutely right. War and violence isn't the way to solve this problem. There's a better way to solve the problem. But it's such an amazing thing that this shining example of basically what a utopia could be, what a perfect civilization on Earth could be in the Marvel universe is especially right now. Is a civilization that is in Africa and is black people. It's African people. Because it's sort of the antidote to everything coming out of America at the moment.
Part of the stuff with Killmonger is not only is it about his ideology, but also the idea that like he doesn't have the same women influence in his life. And I thought that was like an interesting angle for stuff that he didn't escape toxic masculinity. He's part of that rage. And the one woman you do see in his life, he kills immediately when it serves him, right? And so it's this idea that part of it is the idea, even when, what do they say here? And by the way, go read really awesome articles by wonderful POCs, like women of color have written so much about feminism and how important it is to them. I happen to read this article as a white woman and it's written by a white woman, so it's not necessarily a voice that should be heralded, but it's something that I can, like, it's talking about feminism in different ways, and there's so much other conversations. I'm just using this one right now. But one of the things is the idea that he channels his anger in sort of this really masculine way, like the idea of like rage and not knowing what it is, and that when he goes into that dreamscape and he encounters his father, you see the idea that the father has a link to Wakanda and that whole society, and makes him a bit softer, and he kind of feels bad for his son who's been left in this cold world and doesn't have that. And you can see that he feels bad that his son is left out. Whether that's, and obviously it's not just feminism, but I'm saying, or not just the women, but I'm saying part of that plays into that character. And it's just a really interesting deconstruction of like all of the levels of things that compound problems.
And I think that it is absolutely intentional on the part of the writers and Ryan Coogler, the director, to make that juxtaposition that T'Challa is surrounded by these incredible, strong women. And then the one man in his, well, two men, because there's the priest and then there's his friend.
I forget the friend's name.
Is Okoye his buddy? Which one's Okoye?
I'm sorry, I don't remember the names of the...
Or is Okoye?
Guys.
No. It's tough, and this is absolutely sort of the white ignorance.
Zuri is the priest, and
they're hard names to remember. It's not Okoye. It's one of the other characters. I can't remember his name right now. Baku is the man-ape. What's
the gorilla guy?
Yeah. But his friend that's like his best friend.
The rhino guy,
Yeah, the rhino guy. It's like he is wrong, right? He makes all these bad decisions.
And he realizes it in the end because his wife is like, hey, dude.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Like.
Well, and she's willing to sacrifice herself for her ideology.
Yeah.
And he's not willing to sacrifice her for his.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's when he stops. Yeah, no, but then Eric Killmonger, he's in his story, we don't see, in his backstory, we don't see a woman. We just don't. Like, he's on the basketball court with his male contemporaries.
Yeah, and he doesn't have a mother, and he doesn't have...
Yeah, and then there's his father and Zuri, and like... Yeah, it's just this... When you're watching the movie, you don't really think about it, but then when you look back on it, it's almost like there's like a color missing from that part of the story.
Yeah.
When you think about it, right? And then when you think about the implication of what that is supposed to mean, and then you think about the deeper meaning of urban communities and toxic masculinity, and how that affects the young men growing up in those environments, and why they become affiliated with gangs and go into that stuff, which, you know, like I can only understand from an intellectual academic perspective, because it is so far from my own experience, but like that is the thing about genre. This is what we always talk about. It's just that it lets you go. Yeah, is that Black Panther, one of the on paper, one of the kind of most ludicrous, out there sounding characters from a North American white male perspective. So a black man who dresses up in cat pajamas with claws from Africa, and for some reason this hidden African city has way more technology than anywhere else on the planet. It's like when you, and I mean obviously it's no more outlandish than Iron Man, or but I can acknowledge that, like, my personal bias, being a white man living in Canada, it's like that is not where I would go to tell a story, right? And so
because it's not for you, right?
No, exactly.
And that's the beauty of it, is that it, like, we can still appreciate
just because it's not
yeah.
for you doesn't mean that you can't also get
there.
From,
of course, right? And so much.
Yeah, and genre TV, genre storytelling, it gets us there.
Yeah, for sure.
Because Iron Man and Captain America and the Hulk and Thor, 4 white dudes. Yeah. And then, you know, Hawkeye and Black Widow, a couple more white people. Yeah. They got
Slytherin
us,
and a Hufflepuff.
They got us there.
Yeah.
And they bust that door open so that
T'Challa can,
you know, so that the Falcon and T'Challa and hopefully more characters coming down, and all the characters in Black Panther, which I have to do a better job of remembering all of their names. I know, obviously, T'Challa. So Shuri is the woman, the awesome sister who's the Shuri
best.
Is the sister. Okoye is the guard.
Yeah, the
right?
guard. Yeah.
Nakia is Lupita Nyong'o's character. Yeah.
This article, by the way, that I'm referencing is by Shoshana Kessock. If anybody's wondering, that's the one that it's shoshanakessock.com. So
M'Baku's my favorite character in the movie. I love M'Baku. He's the man ape, the leader.
Oh, he's so great. That barks at or I guess doesn't bark, but like grunts, ape, ape like, grunt. Yeah.
My favorite line, and it's like, this is full spoiler. I'm laughing thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh no.
It's hard to get through. Is when he says, "If you speak again, I will feed you to my children," and then like everybody freezes, and he just starts laughing. And he's like, "I'm just joking. We're vegetarians."
Yeah.
Because they model themselves after apes, after gorillas, and gorillas are vegetarian, right? Like primarily vegetarian.
That's
like
hilarious.
They'll eat something. They'll eat meat if it if it comes into their. If they find it, but they don't hunt. Yeah. Right? They forage. So
that's cool.
Yeah. It's just a great it's just the attention to detail, the sense of humor, the world building, the messaging, because there are so many layers. I mean, when did you find his name? I
wasn't looking for it. I'm sorry.
You were saying it though, and I didn't let you finish. And
oh no, I don't think I was. So you can Google it really quickly. Yeah. Black Panther.
BL gets you Black Panther is the top result on IMDb right now.
Woohoo! Rightly so.
Yeah. Wakabi. Wakabi. He. What was the point that I was going to make? What were we talking about?
As a support system, as a guy who was there, and the funniest moments and things we liked. I don't know. Sorry, I couldn't come in with the save for the name. So
no, I know I forgot where I was going.
You forgot where you went.
Totally forgot. But
you'll remember. But
it'll come back to me probably.
It's good, and this is all like relevant to the world. You're talking about Black Panther. And there's other stuff like just we haven't talked about it since Parkland.
That's what
Parkland.
it was. When Wakabi makes the comment about refugees.
Right, yeah.
If we let refugees in, they bring their problems with them.
Right.
Which is a very topical thing to say right now.
Mm-hmm.
And with Syria and everything that's going on there, and I mean, like, throughout Africa, there are all of these.
Canada's had a crazy asylum problem. they've had to change the wait time. Like, there's just so many people seeking asylum from the States that we can't actually process everybody. And now it's like over 2 years to hear your case heard or something. And they had like 16,000 people, I think, in late 2017, one of the months or something. Like, it's insane. The stuff that's happening all over the world.
But that ideology, I think, we associate with Western society, with Europe and North America. But
African
it is
countries host some of the most displaced people on the planet are hosted in other African countries.
And there are also countries within Africa that are very insular and very xenophobic of other African cultures, right? And so, like that, like opening that dialogue and saying that this isn't a black or brown versus white issue, which is what like Donald Trump and his cohorts would want you to believe, is that this is somehow a race issue between white people and the people that they feel are inferior, right? Like that's sort of the dialogue that's happening in America on the far extreme right side of the aisle. But it's sort of it puts it into perspective that this is a global problem that happens everywhere, that could happen even in the most enlightened societies. And when you hear those words as plain as day come out of that character's mouth, it makes you like sit up and go, whoa. Right? So
but I mean the relevant thing right now in the world as well is all of the stuff happening after the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting, like the Parkland shooting. And you sort of talk about this idea of art. Like, everybody sort of knows, like, Emma Gonzalez, obviously one of the best voices of that movement, like, loudest voices of that movement. But the other people that sort of helped start this movement were theater kids. And this idea that the world's kind of looking and being like, of course it's theater kids that are starting these movements, like, or involved in them in such a heavily capacity, because art is the thing that we reflect our life back at us. And there's a reason we make art, and it's to say something. And I think that that's kind of a beautiful, like, relevant thing to, like, when we make art that's important, it matters, and we
for sure.
And so I think that in terms of a very real way, people that make art can make a difference in a really tangible way, and I think that is happening a lot right now. So kudos to those kids, man, in Parkland, and everything that's happening in America. Our hearts are with you.
Absolutely.
But not thoughts and prayers, action. Oh, I mean, thoughts and prayers you can have as well. Those are good. But
you know, like, real
kudos to like people that are doing stuff. Like, people, this is the first time that people are doing things. Like, I see, like, Walmart is changing the age limit for buying guns, and that sports store Dick's or whatever has
Dick's
changed
sporting goods there.
And it's not as if these companies are getting rid of guns or banning guns or anything like that. They're just making practical, sensible choices for how to make the world suck a little less. And I think that it might suck for that really avid 19-year-old enthusiast that wants to go hunting, but you know what? I'm sorry, maybe wait 2 more years. Like, it's like, not if that saves a life, like, I'm just really proud that this is the first time that I've looked to America and been like, oh my gosh, something is happening, and it's really positive and exciting. And I just signed my friend just got registered for a gun. She took a course this weekend, and she needed a reference. And so she came over for Tuesday. She's like, oh, I got to come because I got to get a reference. And she was there. And I was like, how come you didn't get Andrew to sign this? Like, she lives with my friends, right? And she's like, well, you can't, because if there's, like, domestic violence is a real thing. Like, you're not allowed to, like, you can't force them, like, you can't be the signature, because what if you were forced to authorize that person to use a gun and they're going to use it against you? Like, there's things in place. And, like, Canada's not super strict, but some people do believe. I mean, we did have that talk with Dustin before, that Canada's pretty strict.
About a year ago.
But like, in good ways. Like, I think that makes so much sense that, like, I've had to say that she's of sound mind and that she will, like, she doesn't have any reason really to get a gun, but there's no reason for her to not have a gun, and she's not going to go out and buy a gun. She just wants to shoot and, like, have, like, go on ranges. And I actually kind of want her to be a stunt person, which I think would be really cool, because she's also a black belt in karate. So
yeah, I mean, like, it's that freedom can still be there. Yeah, but
just this practical and, like, regulated. Thinking. Yeah,
it's like there are so many things that are protected within the Constitution, but then are also regulated.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Like cars. Like cars. Driving a car. I know it's not in the Constitution or whatever. Constitution. But, like,
it's like, but we regulate that. Yeah. We make sure that, you know, I mean, like, and look, I think that we could do a better job, and living in British Columbia in Canada, and our skyrocketing insurance costs and all of that, we could be doing a better job in this province, particularly in the, like, Metro Vancouver area, of making sure that that stuff is regulated better.
Right, yeah.
But
we at least do it.
Like, it is happening.
Yeah.
And if I feel like we should regulate car ownership and operation better, then of course I feel like guns should be regulated out the wazoo, right? Like, it's if you want to go hunt, first of all, that's that's fine. Be responsible about what you are hunting. Don't hunt things that are endangered. Don't hunt wolves. Don't hunt bears. You know, like
we're gonna ban the grizzly bear hunt in BC. I'm excited for
that. And only hunt during season, and you know
get a license for it.
And if you do, I mean, like, if you go out every weekend and shoot something, that's super wasteful, because what are you doing with it?
No, they might eat it. The thing is, I have absolutely zero problem with people hunting.
But if you were out every weekend shooting a deer, there's no way that you are...
They might sell it.
They might sell it.
Again, there are worse things that people could be doing with guns than hunting. I have no problem with people. I've started to, like, let up on this a little bit.
Even with that, it needs to be responsible. And there's like an ecological aspect of that.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Everything
needs to be regulated.
Yeah.
That's why we have a society. If you don't want to live in a society, there are places in the world that you can go that don't have regulations. Good luck living a happy and prosperous life there. Yeah. Because that is, guess what, where the refugees are coming from. Right, is from those countries that don't have regulations and don't have rule of law, and like, that's sort of like people act like they don't want these things to be like, they don't want the government in their business, and it's like, I do want the government in my business. I just want them acting in my best interest as well.
I'm sorry, this is so topical and exciting.
Yeah.
My mom literally just texted me, and she said, just saw Black Panther. Well, holy cow, best movie I've seen in years. Like, I'm just very excited. Like, I told my mom, I was like, Mom, go see Black Panther. She's like, what's Black Panther? And it was just this thing where she's like, love Forrest Whitaker and Martin Freeman and Stan Lee. She doesn't know who Stan Lee is, but she knows because I tell her. Anyways, and she's like, so good, and the plot's so clever and actually thought-provoking, and those women's roles. It's just, like, so cool that my mom she just texted while we were here, so I feel like that's really... Awesome. I'm very excited that people are seeing this movie, and it's exciting, and it's hitting all the notes. Like, my mom, they're, like, whatever, she relates to Angela Bassett, I guess, in terms of age or whatever. But, like, there's still so much that she can enjoy in that movie, and I'm so glad my mom went, and she's like, I'm going to take your dad on the weekend. Like, she went with a friend, and now she's going to take my dad this weekend, and I think that's so cool. That's cool. So.
That's very cool.
Yay! Cool. People seeing Black Panther.
I think that's a good place to end.